Today, we're going to unpack the really complicated link between youth vaping and mental health. We all see the connection, but it brings up a massive question. Does vaping cause anxiety and depression? Or do kids who are already anxious and depressed turn to vaping? It's like the classic chicken and egg question, and that's exactly what we're going to try and untangle.
Okay, so let's just dive right into the numbers that have health experts so worried. This data comes from the CDC's 2024 National Youth Tobacco Survey, and honestly, it paints a pretty alarming picture. So take a look at this number, 42.1%. That's the percentage of young people who currently vape and also report having moderate to severe symptoms of depression and anxiety. But, a number like this is pretty meaningless without some context. And here is where that context just hits you. That 42.1%, it is more than double the rate for young people who don't vape. For them, it's just 21%. I mean, we're not talking about a small gap here. That is a massive difference that really makes you stop and think.
And that brings us right back to the central mystery we're trying to solve. When you see a connection that is this strong, you have to ask, what's actually driving what here? Is the vaping causing these mental health issues, or is it the other way around?
So to start pulling this apart, we have to look at what's happening under the hood. And one of the clearest connections between vaping and anxiety is something we're all pretty familiar with: nicotine dependence. This data from the CDC is incredibly telling. Young vapers who are also dealing with significant anxiety or depression are showing much higher signs of being addicted to nicotine. We're talking 37.6% reporting strong cravings and over 28% feeling that need to vape within 30 minutes of waking up. Those are just classic signs of addiction, and they're way higher than for their peers.
And this is where you really start to see the feedback loop. The CDC itself points out that the stress of addiction, the cravings, the withdrawal, that doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It can actually make those feelings of anxiety and depression worse. It's literally like pouring fuel on a fire.
So here's the crucial point. If vaping can actually make these feelings worse in the long run, why are so many young people who are already struggling with anxiety and depression picking it up to begin with? What's the motivation?
Well, the National Youth Tobacco Survey gives us a pretty direct answer. For young vapers dealing with those moderate to severe symptoms, the number one reason they give for vaping, at a staggering 51%, is because they feel anxious, stressed, or depressed. That's twice the rate of their peers. This tells us pretty clearly that many of them see vaping as a coping mechanism. It's a form of self-medication. They really believe, or at least they hope, that it's going to give them some relief from these awful feelings. So now, let's dive into the deeper psychology that's really driving this behavior.
Not everyone who feels anxious turns to vaping. So what makes some people more susceptible? Well, researchers have found a couple of key psychological traits that can act like powerful triggers.
The first is what's known as emotion dysregulation. It sounds like a complex term, but really, it's just when someone has a really hard time managing their own emotions. When they feel something negative, like stress or sadness, it can feel completely overwhelming, like they have no control over it.
And the second trait is something called negative urgency. This is a very specific kind of impulsivity. It's that powerful, rash impulse to do something, anything, right now to escape a really intense negative feeling. It's not just feeling bad, it's feeling this desperate need to act on it immediately.
And this is the critical connection that research from the NIH has uncovered. When you combine those two traits, that powerful urge to escape bad feelings plus having a hard time controlling your emotions, you get a much higher risk. That person is way more likely to look at vaping not just as an option, but as an immediate solution to their distress.
So now we can kind of see all the pieces of the puzzle coming together. We have the emotional trigger, the motivation to self-medicate, and the addictive substance that ends up making everything worse. And this finally lets us answer our initial question.
The answer isn't so simple. It's not that one just causes the other. The reality is far more complex and, frankly, far more dangerous. They feed each other in this self-perpetuating, vicious cycle.
And here's exactly how that cycle plays out. It starts with a young person feeling anxious or stressed. That feeling then triggers that negative urgency, that impulsive need for relief, which leads them to vape. But then the nicotine addiction that follows creates its own stress and withdrawal, which makes the original anxiety even worse. And of course, that creates an even stronger urge to vape, and the cycle just repeats, getting stronger every single time.
So, how do we break it?
According to the CDC and other experts, the solution can't just be about quitting vaping. It has to be a two-pronged attack. We need to integrate mental health support directly into these quitting programs, teach healthier coping skills and emotion regulation, and proactively screen all teens for both issues at the same time.
And that leaves us with this one final, really crucial thought. If, for so many young people, vaping is actually just a symptom of a much deeper struggle with mental health, then focusing only on the vape itself is kind of like treating a cough without ever checking for pneumonia. To truly solve the youth vaping crisis, maybe we need to treat the problem that it's being used to medicate.